Howdy, folks. I am so excited. Let's get this show on the road. Let me pop over here so you folks can see me. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is VooDoo Val, and I'm going to be your host for yet another round of Photoshop Daily Creative Challenges, and this week is extra special. So typically, you folks who have been in these challenges, you know the drill. Every morning for the week, I will join you for about 30 minutes as we go over some kind of refreshers on Photoshop skills, creating some interesting assets, and all of the things that you generally can expect from Photoshop Daily Creative Challenges. But this week, our schedule is a little interesting, and I personally am very excited about it. So for the first 3 days, for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I will join you as usual in the morning for our 30-minute show. We're going to take Thursday off, and then Friday is extra fancy. So Friday is going to be an hour-long challenge, which I think is super awesome because a lot of the time when I create things for these DCCs, if I'm working on something that could eventually turn into a much larger project, I work for the 30 minutes and then sort of Martha Stewart you, right? Where I show you, well, if you put more time into it, this is what you can get. But Friday, we are going to actually be putting a full hour into our project together and creating a pretty substantial piece for our project, which I think is going to be really awesome. First of all, before we dive into what I've got planned for today, I would love to welcome all of our friends in the chat. I see CJ, it's good to see you, man. I see Susan Holt, Patrick, welcome in. Robert, thank you all so much for joining us. And let's kind of dive into it. Let's see what we've got planned for today. So if you check out the description below, you can get a link to the starter file that I have prepared for you today, and it looks a little something like this. Not like this. Hold on, 1 second. Let me see if I can change this up real quick. You guys can see all of my super top secret things. Hopefully this is going to show you guys the right one. There we go. Sorry about that. This happens every once in a while where I'm working in a new space different from where I was streaming the last time. And we're live, and sometimes things like this happen live. Okay, so this is what your starter file looks like, not like my Adobe playlist and YouTube windows. And it says, use generative features and photo editing techniques to create unique photorealistic design assets. Experiment with generative features to create multiple sizes of an element. So what does this mean? I have been hunting around as best I can for like the best techniques I think authentically represent the problems that I have within my own design process, utilizing generative features to kind of help me along the way. And one of the things that I run into constantly is finding an asset that I think is perfect for a project, but realizing that that asset does not really come in a set. For example, I'm going to show you what I mean by that. If I come over here to Adobe Stock, I'm going to pop my little window over here so you folks can see it. This is Adobe Stock, just stock.adobe.com. I have come over to the free section, and I can search through here and check out all of the different paper elements that they have available. Now, when it comes to working on a project like what we're going to be doing, we're going to be creating assets that we can use to develop project templates, which can be reused over and over again, no matter what kind of project you are working on. This one particularly will focus on organic textures like parchment paper, things like that. We're going to focus on utilizing some plants, some organic wood textures, and we're going to be creating posters, some 3D text effect templates, and also some templates for creating posts for social media, which will match our overarching theme. Now for this project, maybe I think to myself, you know, I want some organic paper textures. I want some strips of paper that can be utilized as kind of a stylized customized module to contain text, things like that. Little background boxes for my text to go on. But something like this, while it does have like pretty nice organic edges, it's not exactly what I want. I want it to be a little more uniform than this. So I scroll through even more, and maybe I come to something that's a little more uniform like this, something with a cleaner edge, cleaner lines. We've got some other strips of paper like this one right here, which has the organic lines that I want, and it's more of a box. Same with this one. We do have some organic edges here, like paper tears and stuff, and it's more of a box, which is kind of what I'm looking for here. But with a lot of these, sometimes even when I find the shape that I'm really looking for, it doesn't actually have the exact paper texture that I want. So I find myself sort of creating my own assets. And even then, if the paper texture that I downloaded doesn't have, like, you know, maybe I do really like this one, but there's only one of it. You know, maybe I'm looking through Adobe stock, and because of my, you know, current state, I can't go and license tons of images, so I have to utilize what's in the free section, and sometimes only one or two pieces from a series are available for free. So I've come to this issue a lot, and this is how I use generative features to kind of combat that. So we're gonna dive through and start creating a series of really great paper textures and various sizes, and this is how I do that. So let's put this over here and take a peek at what we've got going on. So I've kind of got these shapes here where we're going to create some paper texture strips in these various sizes, things that you might use if you were creating like a social media post, like an Instagram post. Maybe you need that paper texture in a wider, thinner format so that you can head the top of a post. Maybe you need something that's going to be for a Facebook cover or whatever it is that you're working on. We're going to do that today. So in my library, I have actually gone and downloaded these images, which I've put the links in there so you folks can work with the same paper textures that I'm working with today. And I'm going to go ahead and just hide my my info. I've got it all grouped there, nice and neat for you folks so you can hide it. And we're gonna open my CC library and take a look at my Adobe stock images. Now I have these 3 paper textures. I've also found some wood textures and some leaf textures, which I encourage you folks to kind of check out Adobe stock and find some other assets for your project that you would like. But we're gonna start here with this stock photo of this nice, neat little kind of organically textured paper that has these nice tears around the edges. And I'm also, something I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hide the very background as well, because one thing about this is it has a shadow on it, and I don't really want a shadow. I'd like to be able to add a shadow as I like. Welcome in, Sean. It's good to see you. And you too, Odari. Welcome. Hello, RB. Thank you all so much for joining. Clarissa, it's good to see you as well. Thank you, thank you. And I also want to peek over. I see that Debo and Emi are over on the YouTube channel. Welcome in. Thank you so much for joining. All right. So let's go ahead and hide this background. The first thing I'm gonna do is come over to my, you can use object selection, or you can just select a selection tool, and as long as you have your contextual taskbar, it will ask you if you also want to subject select. And if you don't see your contextual taskbar, you can go to Window and scroll all the way down and make sure that's checked. I also, as a tip, I like to pin my taskbar position so it stays where I put it. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit subject select and select our subject, because this is, I guess it doesn't select 100% right here, and this is, you know, not uncommon for something that is perfectly white like this. But we can also, if I go ahead and deselect, we can also try grabbing that object selection tool, and we can come over here and just select it like so. And what I've done is I did not drag that to the very, very edge. I kind of left it off a little bit to kind of allow Adobe to feel out the edges of that paper without capturing that shadow. And I'm just going to Control J. You could also mask if you want, but Control J just allows me to duplicate selection. So I now have a layer that is literally just my clean paper selection. And I like this, but I also want to kind of add some new texture to it. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this other stock photo, which is included for you, over the top of my nice little paper cutout here. We'll hit enter. And I am going to right click this and create clipping mask so that it kind of clips into the shape of our paper. Now, for those of you who are kind of wondering, well, how do I have all of my different assets in here? What I've done is I've licensed them from the free section of Adobe Stock. And when you hit the license button, it will ask you if you know, where you want to put it, which library you'd like to add it to. And I have actually told it to put it into this DCC library. So everything I use for this project will eventually arrive here. Now, the last thing I want to do is I want to throw this on a blending mode. Multiply works for this. I'm assuming probably overlay. Actually, that's a little too bright because the underneath is dark. So linear burn, multiply, darken. I think we're going to go with multiply because this just kind of creates more of a realistic vibe here with this. Now I really like this. I think that this is perfect. And one thing that you can do here is you can convert all of these to a smart object. In fact, I'm going to bump my webcam over here so that you folks can really see what I'm working on. Let's go ahead and put that right there. So I've just grabbed my layers here just by holding shift and selecting the top and bottommost layer. And you can, like I said, convert this to a smart object if you like. In fact, I recommend having a smart object or a group of your original editable files just so that you can come back and change them up later if you want. And I'm going to duplicate that and I'm going to rasterize what I'm working on because I'd like to be able to kind of transform and change this as I see fit, and the smart object will hold its original shape, and I don't really want it to do that because we're about to get real funky with this. So you'll remember in the info section we had all of these different shapes that we could kind of create assets for. So let's go ahead and, keeping these in mind, let's use generative features to create a set of assets in various shapes that all match each other. I'm going to go ahead and hide my background, and I might even Control Shift in or Command Shift in to create a new layer, and I will paint bucket that white for the time being, just so I can see everything in the background clearly. I'm not distracted by the checkerboard. And we are going to, let's go ahead and grab my selection tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the top of my paper here, and I'm just going to Control T to free transform this into a much thinner piece of paper. I think that that honestly is going to work right there. And what I'd like to do now is grab my selection tool, make a little selection just like so, and I'm just going to hit generative fill on my contextual taskbar just with this little slip of paper selected. And what we're going to do is kind of merge this without typing in a prompt. We're just going to hit generate and let it do its thinking, and it should merge these together in a pretty dynamic way. Now, typically when we do this, we use a lot of various tools, photo editing tools, when it comes to kind of blending different assets together, creating a seamless presentation for certain assets. This is actually pretty cool. It does give us that line because there was that color variation, but we can kind of flip through and see all of the various versions of this available. Honestly, I like this one pretty well, and I like this one pretty well. So let's go ahead and actually go with this one. This looks pretty darn good to me. But yeah, when we typically do this, we usually have to use like the spot healing brush or the stamp tool, the patch tool, all of these different things that can help us to blend in seams when it comes to photo editing. But with the power of generative features, generative fill specifically, I'm able to kind of create all of these little pieces, little working pieces, pretty quickly and seamlessly. So there's one of our pieces. Let's go ahead and I'll hide that for now. Let's turn this back on, duplicate it, and I'm gonna create an even thinner line of this. So let's go ahead and hide. Let's rasterize, rasterize layer. And what I'm gonna do this time is I'm going to straight up cut out a huge piece, and then we're gonna bring this down to be even thinner. Let's do something like this. Just bring this all the way down, because maybe I want a teeny tiny little thin piece that's going to be like a header of sorts for my project. Let's go ahead and deselect, and then let's snag this. And we might even snag a little piece of this because we've got this little area that kind of hangs off, and let's go ahead and hit generative fill again. And then we're going to create a square to use as well, and we're going to start cultivating a CC library of assets to use in future projects. Now, if you guys don't have time to join me for all of our projects for the week, keep in mind that all of the starter files that are going to pop up in the description, ooh, that looks good. All the starter files that will pop up in the description for this week of challenges will have the assets that I created the previous day. So if you miss a day or you're running a little bit behind, you will always have all of the things I create to work from as well. So let's go ahead and group this one. That looks pretty darn good, and we will unhide our previous one. And you know what? I'm really liking this. Let's go ahead and put that right there. Love it. So now we're starting to create a really nice asset pack, right? We're creating our own assets that are resized perfectly for various uses, which is very, very useful when it comes to creating this. Another thing that I've just realized too as I've turned this on is you might notice that there are some little pieces of the sampled background as well, because sometimes generative fill will sample what's behind it. We've had a white background on this whole time. So another thing that you can do here is I'm just going to go ahead and Control E to merge this group. You can mask or duplicate, turn to a smart object, however you like to do it. But I will just, let's grab our object selection tool, and I'm just going to drag that around the edges there. We might actually need a little bit more sensitivity on that. So let's actually, maybe our magic wand. Maybe our magic wand can do that for us. Yeah, we can just select that, and then I can Control X and just cut and kind of clean up these edges. However it is you want to do it, you can go ahead and do that. So now we've got some paper textures. The next thing I want to do is kind of do the same thing with some items and objects which are a little bit more complicated, because you might not be working with paper textures. You might be working with other organic shapes. I think typically cleaner, harder edges are a lot easier to do because it's very precise. You know, there's not a lot of guessing and things that needs to go into it, but something, for example, let me go ahead and group all of our paper together just so we have it all in one space here. Grouping that just by selecting all of the layers and hitting Control G or Command G if you're working on a Mac. We're going to call this paper. But maybe you are working with something a little bit more detailed, such as wood or plants. These are things where, you know, the paper texture, it's really easy to kind of have a lot more experimentation and movement and variation with how the generative features will fill in empty spaces and kind of guesstimate what exactly you're looking for. But things like this, which, you know, are very discernible, very recognizable, are a little harder to do, and I'm going to show you how I like to ensure that they look realistic when it comes to creating realism assets. Katarina, welcome in. It's good to see you. Let me make sure I'm not missing anybody. Jack Watson, hello. Paloma, welcome in. Christy, hello. Good to see you again, my friend. Let me know if you folks have any questions. Melvin in the YouTube chat is saying both selections are good. Yeah, I think so too, Melvin. I think that when it comes to our paper textures, there's a lot of really great use cases for that. I find myself looking for solutions and fixes for stuff like that constantly, you know, where I'm like, okay, I really like this wood texture, but I'm gonna need like 4 of these, you know, so am I gonna have to kind of build these from scratch every time I want to utilize this wood texture in my project? No, I think the best way really is to create your own asset pack and then move from there. All right, so let's go ahead and see what we can do with the wood texture and with our leaves, because we've got about 5 minutes here. So with our leaves, let's come over here. What I'm going to do is subject select, actually, just to get our leaf selection here, and I'm going to hit Control J or Command J if you're working on a Mac. And I say both of those hotkeys because I'm a PC girl. You know, I'm using my PC, and I want to make sure everybody has the proper hotkeys. So let's come over here and kind of alter this a little bit, shall we? Let's grab our lasso tool, which I'm selecting just by hitting L on my keyboard. And we have this lovely leaf, but maybe we want to duplicate this. So let's put this up here, and then let's hold, little tip here, hold Alt until you see the duplicate cursor appear, and you can actually duplicate your element just like so. And let's say we want a project where we can kind of add in some interesting leaves and things, but we could only find one sort of leaf cluster asset available to us in this set. Well, maybe I want to make myself my own with more leaves on it. So let's come over here to this, L on my keyboard to select my lasso, and let's come over here and just select our leaf, and I'm going to hit Control J, Control T, or Command T, Command J, and I'm going to make this leaf smaller just to, you know, we've kind of duplicated it here. Let's go ahead and flip this horizontal, rotate it around, and then we're going to throw it right here. And notice this is not a perfect selection, but we definitely want to throw this other leaf in like so. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's also grab, you know, coming back to our original layer here, let's also grab this leaf here. Let's duplicate that, and let's make this larger and rotate that and throw that right there. It's a little bit blurry because it was a much smaller leaf, so maybe we'll make it a little bit smaller. And let's also do a duplicate of, actually we've already duplicated that leaf, so let's go ahead and duplicate this leaf again and rotate it around. We'll flip it horizontal and throw it right in here. So we just have like a little bit more variety. Now this is cool, and what you could do is you could technically come in and just kind of clean up where all of these things are connected. The problem is, as you get into doing something like this, that it's kind of the same leaf or two repeated over and over again. And if you don't have a series to be sampling different kinds of leaves from, or you have the same kind of leaves but they're taken by 2 different photographers from 2 separate photo shoots and nothing's really lining up, generative fill is really great at kind of fixing that up. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to Control E and merge all of these things together. And then with my lasso tool, I'm going to come in and I'm going to select a lot of these places where all of these added additions kind of connect in. And I'm also going to select some of the areas where you can definitely tell that this leaf has been duplicated multiple times, because I want to kind of change the inside of a lot of these leaves to kind of give more variation and make things look a little less uniform, a little more organic. So let's go ahead with these selections here and hit our generative fill and see what we get. This can be a little trickier because it's going to do some thinking and it's going to give you multiple ideas for, like, do you like this one? Do you like this one? Which we'll see here in a moment. But I have had a lot of, like, I think that's great. It looks like everything is connected, very uniform. We've even taken out those areas where some of my white selection from the background was overlapping on top of the leaves, and it's filled it in with more leaf texture. We can kind of scroll through here and see what we really get. I actually really like this last one. So now we have 2 unique assets for our our leaves. It looks very realistic because we didn't do generative fill on the entirety of the thing, just in these little tiny connection points where I want Adobe to just like, okay, you can see this is leaf texture, fill it in and make it look a little more realistic. And the same is true with our final selection here, which I will do very, very quickly because we've got about a minute and a half left. I can't believe it. Let's go ahead and transform this into a much larger piece. So let's take this wood, just like so. Actually, I want to duplicate that, make it thin. I'm gonna duplicate this a few times, just like that. We'll duplicate this one here, and I'm actually gonna flip this around. And then let's merge all of this together, and just like we've done this before, I'm just gonna take my lasso tool and start lassoing some of these edges to make sure it doesn't look like certain elements are being repeated, that sort of thing, and we can hit generative fill and see if we can create something that looks pretty darn good. That is all of the time that I have for today, unfortunately. I wish that, honestly, this is so satisfying to be able to do. I love kind of connecting pieces with generative fill just like this. I could be here all day, but I hope that this helps as you start to create. That looks great. As you start to create your own unique assets in a series, that this can help you sort of do that. So I have to take off before I get cut off, but this has been a blast. I hope to see you folks tomorrow morning where we create 3D text templates for our project, which I think is going to be pretty darn neat. So I will see you folks then. Until then, please enjoy the rest of the Adobe Live day. Adios, folks.